The room was dimly lit, the faint hum of fluorescent lights filling the air as Pam Bondi sat at her desk, surrounded by stacks of files and a laptop glowing with endless tabs of research. Her sharp eyes scanned through the documents, her mind racing to connect the dots. She had always been known for her tenacity, her ability to uncover the truth no matter how deeply it was buried. But this case was different. This case had the potential to shake the very foundations of power. It had started with a tip, an anonymous email sent to her office late one night. The subject line had been simple: the truth they don't want you to know. Attached was a single document, heavily redacted, but with enough details to pique her interest. The email claimed that a powerful network of individuals, hidden behind layers of bureaucracy and influence, was manipulating the system for their own gain. At first, Pam had dismissed it as another conspiracy theory, but something about the precision of the details, the specificity of the claims, made her pause. She had spent weeks digging, following leads that took her from the corridors of power in Washington to the back alleys of small towns, where whispers of corruption lingered. Every step of the way, she felt the weight of resistance, missing files, uncooperative witnesses, and veiled threats. But Pam Bondi wasn't the type to back down. She had built her career on holding the powerful accountable, and this case was no different. Tonight, she was close. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was more shocking than she could have imagined. She leaned back in her chair, her fingers drumming against the desk as she stared at the evidence laid out before her. "This can't be real," she muttered to herself, but the documents didn't lie. Her phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a text from her assistant. "Meeting in 10. They're waiting." Pam sighed, running a hand through her hair. The meeting was with a group of high-ranking officials who had been less than cooperative throughout her investigation. She knew they were watching her, waiting for her to slip up, but she also knew she had something they didn't proof. She gathered the files, her hands trembling slightly as she slipped them into a leather briefcase. The weight of what she was about to reveal settled heavily on her shoulders. This wasn't just another case. This was a bombshell that would send shockwaves through the nation. As she walked into the conference room, the tension was palpable. The officials sat around the table, their faces unreadable. Pam took her seat at the head of the table, placing the briefcase in front of her. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "I know this is unusual, but what I'm about to share with you cannot wait." She opened the briefcase and pulled out the documents, sliding them across the table. The officials exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from curiosity to concern as they began to read. "What is this?" one of them asked, his voice tight. "This," Pam said, her gaze unwavering, "is the truth. A truth that has been hidden for far too long." The room fell silent as the officials absorbed the information. Pam watched their reactions closely, knowing that the next few moments would determine the course of her investigation, and perhaps her career. "This is explosive," another official said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If this gets out—" "It will," Pam interrupted, "because the people deserve to know, and because I won't let this be swept under the rug." The officials exchanged uneasy glances, but no one argued. They knew Pam Bondi well enough to know that she wasn't bluffing. As the meeting adjourned, Pam felt a mix of relief and apprehension. She had taken the first step, but she knew the fight was far from over. The people behind this conspiracy wouldn't go down without a fight, and they had resources far beyond what she could imagine. But Pam Bondi wasn't afraid. She had faced powerful adversaries before, and she had always come out on top. This time would be no different. The days following the meeting were a whirlwind of activity. Pam Bondi found herself at the center of a storm, her every move scrutinized by both allies and enemies. The documents she had uncovered were explosive, revealing a web of corruption that reached the highest levels of power. But with each step forward, the resistance grew stronger. Her office was inundated with calls, some from supporters praising her courage, others from anonymous voices threatening her to back down. Pam ignored the threats, focusing instead on building her case. She knew that the only way to ensure justice was to present an airtight argument, one that couldn't be dismissed or discredited. Late one night, as she worked alone in her office, there was a knock at the door. She looked up, startled, to see a familiar face. Marcus, a former colleague and one of the few people she trusted implicitly. "You look like you haven't slept in days," Marcus said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. "I haven't," Pam replied with a tired smile. "But I'm close." "So close?" Marcus sat down across from her, his expression serious. "I've been following your case. You're playing with fire, Pam. These people don't mess around." "I know," she said, her voice firm. "But neither do I." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes locking onto hers. "What do you need from me?" Pam hesitated for a moment before answering. "I need someone I can trust to help me dig deeper. There's more to this than what's in these files. I can feel it." Marcus nodded. "You've got me. But we need to be careful. One wrong move, and this could blow up in our faces." Over the next few days, Pam and Marcus worked tirelessly, following leads and connecting the dots. They uncovered a network of shell companies, offshore accounts, and shadowy figures who operated in the shadows, pulling strings from behind the scenes. One name kept coming up, a powerful businessman with ties to politicians, law enforcement, and the media. He was the linchpin of the entire operation, the one who had orchestrated the corruption from the shadows. "We need to take him down," Pam said, her voice filled with determination. "If we can expose him, the whole house of cards will collapse." "It won't be easy," Marcus warned. "He's protected, and he's dangerous." "I know," Pam replied, "but I didn't come this far to back down now." Their investigation led them to a secluded estate on the outskirts of the city, where the businessman was rumored to be hosting a private gathering. Pam and Marcus knew it was a long shot, but they had to try. Disguised as guests, they infiltrated the event, blending in with the crowd of wealthy elites. The atmosphere was opulent, with chandeliers glittering overhead and the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. But beneath the surface, there was an undercurrent of tension. Pam's heart raced as she spotted the businessman across the room, surrounded by a group of admirers. She exchanged a glance with Marcus, who gave her a subtle nod. It was now or never. She approached the businessman, her confidence masking the fear that churned in her stomach. "Mr. Harrington," she said, extending her hand, "I'm a big admirer of your work." Harrington turned to her, his eyes narrowing slightly as he shook her hand. "And you are?" "Just someone who appreciates success," Pam replied with a smile. "I was hoping we could talk. I have a proposition that might interest you." Harrington studied her for a moment before nodding. "Very well. Let's step into my study." As they walked away from the crowd, Pam felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it, the moment she had been working toward. But she also knew that one misstep could cost her everything. In the study, Harrington closed the door and turned to her, his expression unreadable. "What's this about?" Pam took a deep breath, her mind racing. "I know what you've been doing," she said, her voice steady. "And I have proof." Harrington's eyes flickered with something. Surprise, anger, fear? Before he masked it with a cold smile. "You're playing a dangerous game, Ms. Bondi. One you're not equipped to win." "Maybe," Pam replied, her gaze unwavering. "But I'm willing to bet everything on it." The tension in the room was palpable as the two faced off, each waiting for the other to make the next move. Pam knew she was walking a tightrope, but she also knew that she had the upper hand. For now. "What do you want?" Harrington finally asked, his voice low and dangerous. "The truth," Pam said. "And justice." Harrington laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "Justice? You think you can bring me down? You're just one person." "Maybe," Pam replied. "But I'm not alone." As if on cue, the door burst open and Marcus stepped inside, followed by a team of federal agents. Harrington's face turned pale as he realized the trap had been sprung. Pamela Bondi, one of the agents said, stepping forward. We'd been waiting for this moment. Pam felt a surge of triumph as Harrington was led away in handcuffs, his empire crumbling around him. But she also knew that this was just the beginning. The fight for justice was far from over. As she stood there, watching the scene unfold, Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "We did it," Pam replied, her voice soft but filled with determination. "But this isn't the end. It's just the beginning." The arrest of Harrington sent shockwaves through the nation. News outlets scrambled to cover the story, their headlines screaming about the downfall of one of the most powerful men in the country. But for Pam Bondi, the victory was bittersweet. She knew that taking down Harrington was just the first step in a much larger battle. In the days that followed, Pam and Marcus worked tirelessly to unravel the rest of the network. They followed leads, interviewed witnesses, and pieced together the evidence that would bring the entire operation crashing down. It was grueling work, but Pam refused to back down. One evening, as she sat in her office reviewing a stack of documents, there was a knock at the door. She looked up to see Marcus standing there, his expression grim. "We've got a problem," he said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. "What is it?" Pam asked, her heart sinking. "Harrington's lawyers are fighting back," Marcus replied. "They're claiming the evidence was obtained illegally. If they succeed, the whole case could fall apart." Pam's mind raced as she processed the information. She had known this would happen, but she hadn't expected it so soon. "We need to move fast," she said, her voice firm. "We need to get ahead of this before they can bury the truth." Marcus nodded. "I've already started reaching out to our contacts. We'll need all the help we can get." Over the next few days, Pam and Marcus worked around the clock, gathering additional evidence and building their case. They knew that the stakes were higher than ever, and that one misstep could cost them everything. But despite the challenges, Pam remained determined. She had come too far to let this slip through her fingers. One afternoon, as she was preparing for a press conference, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "You're playing with fire. Back off, or you'll regret it." Pam stared at the message, her heart pounding. She knew it was a threat, but she also knew that she couldn't let it stop her. She took a deep breath, her resolve hardening. "I'm not backing down," she muttered to herself. At the press conference, Pam stood before a room full of reporters, her expression calm but determined. She knew that this was her moment to set the record straight, to ensure that the truth couldn't be buried. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady, "what I'm about to share with you is the result of months of hard work and dedication. It's a story of corruption, greed, and the abuse of power. But more than that, it's a story of justice." She went on to detail the evidence they had uncovered, painting a picture of a network that had operated in the shadows for far too long. The reporters listened in stunned silence, their pens scribbling furiously as they tried to keep up. When she finished, the room erupted into a flurry of questions. Pam answered them one by one, her confidence unwavering. She knew that this was just the beginning, but she also knew that she had taken a crucial step forward. As she left the press conference, Marcus fell into step beside her. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "We did it," Pam replied, her voice soft but filled with determination. "But this isn't the end. It's just the beginning." In the weeks that followed, the case against Harrington and his network gained momentum. More evidence came to light, and more people came forward to share their stories. The public outcry was overwhelming, and the pressure on those involved became too much to bear. One by one, the members of the network were brought to justice. Some fought back, but in the end, the truth was too powerful to ignore. For Pam, the victory was sweet, but it was also a reminder of the work that still needed to be done. She knew that corruption was a pervasive problem, one that couldn't be solved overnight. But she also knew that every step forward was a step in the right direction. As she stood on the steps of the courthouse, watching as Harrington was led away in handcuffs, Pam felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. She had fought for justice, and she had won. But she also knew that the fight was far from over. There would always be more battles to fight, more truths to uncover. And she was ready for whatever came next.